than ever to find an Ayala Land property to call your own. In celebration of Ayala Land's 35th anniversary and Ayala Corporation's 190th anniversary, the dream of owning an Ayala Land investment is easier than ever. Through Ready Residences, you can move in early and enjoy your new property even during the down payment stage. Take advantage of extended payment terms and more affordable monthly installments, available for durations of more than 24 months. Live in one of Ayala Land's sought-after developments across the Philippines. If you're ready to be part of a vibrant Ayala Land community, the time is now. Ready Residences by Ayala.
Ano ang gusto mong marating? Tara, sabayan ka namin. Punta tayo sa mga di laging naaabot. Doon, bibigyang buhay natin ang pangarap at sasalubungin ang pag-unlad. Sundan natin ang mga maghahatid ng pagbabago. Dala-dala ang mga pirasong bubuo nito. Dumiretso tayo patungo sa mas maaliwalas na bukas. Kung saan malayang bumabiyahe ang kahit sino. Tuloy-tuloy lang ang paglalakbay. Hanggang lahat tayo ay makaangat. Hanggang abot tanaw na ang kinabukasan at abot kamay na natin ang araw. Marami na tayong narating sa loob ng 110 taon. At hindi tayo hihinto roon. Marami pa tayong tatahakin, tutuklasin, at tutuparin. Sa daan pabukas, andito kami. Kasabay mo sa pagsulong.
The DNA of business today is changing. It's no longer enough to be the biggest on the block. You've got to be nimble, adaptable, light on your feet. Because in today's world, it's all about how fast you can move. The need for speed is at the heart of any digital transformation. How fast you can go from idea to impact, overhead to optimized, development to delivery. At PlanView, we're building the future of connected work by helping business leaders like you translate strategy into results. All of this with a clear pane of glass view, giving the ability to assess risk, leverage real-time scenario planning, and even get quick insights into what actions to take on a large and small scale. So, what's in your future? How will the DNA of your business evolve? With PlanView, you can accelerate your growth, transform your business, and stay ahead of the competition. See the PlanView platform in action. Watch an on-demand demo now.
Alagang Unilab yan.
Miss Marge May B. Estoria, public school teacher. Habang buntis ako, may time na nag-bed rest ako. Diniscuss ko siya sa OB ko. In-explain niya sa akin kung bakit calcium aid yung binigay niya sa akin, kung bakit Hemarate FA, and kung paano ko ba halagaan yung sarili ko. Para sa akin, yung alagang Unilab, it's a commitment. Kung wala yon, hindi ko matutulungan yung anak ko and yung next generation.
Alagang Unilab yan.
Delicious or nutritious? Now you don't have to choose.
Gardenia High Fiber Wheat Raisin Loaf. It's nutritious, made delicious.
With added vitamins and minerals, the goodness of high fiber, wheat, and raisins in every slice. Choose nutritious and delicious. Choose Gardenia. Gardenia High Fiber Wheat Raisin Loaf. Masarap na, nutritious pa.
Kampante ako. Basta Gardenia, masustansya. Masigla, malakas ang pamilya.
Masigla kas ako. Basta Gardenia. Masigla kas ako.
Ang Gardenia, mas ma-vitamins, mas ma-minerals, mas masustansya. Fresh pa, mas sulit, mas sarap.
Masigla kas rin. Basta Gardenia.
friends, fellows, and to everyone who's here in the Fairmont Makati. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the opening day of the 56th FINEX Conference, Global Perspective on Sustainability, Diversity, and Digitalization. I'm April Litan, and I will be your host for today. Before we officially start our program, may I request everyone to stand and join us in prayer, to be followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Dear God, thank you for allowing us to meet at today's event. May you extend your divine wisdom to our speaker so he may be able to impart his knowledge and expertise. Bless all the participants that they will obtain vital information from this event, that they will go out and share what they had learned in the spirit of your love and generosity. May this activity glorify your name alone. Amen.
Okay, you may now take your seats. So good morning, everyone, and again, welcome to the opening of the 56th FINEX Conference. This year's overarching theme is Empower Progress, Inspire Change, Transformational Growth through Sustainability, Diversity, and Digitalization. It was lovely to see all of you today. The FINEX Week Committee has prepared a jam-packed week for all of us today, or this week rather. Now, to officially start our week-long conference, may I call on FINEX President Augusto Bengson to deliver his opening remarks.
Good morning, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, and fellow members of FINEX. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 56th FINEX Conference, a highly anticipated event that brings together some of the brightest minds in finance, government, and leadership. As the flagship annual conference of FINEX, this week-long gathering promises to provide us with new insights, bold ideas, and transformative strategies that will help shape the future of our industries, our country, and our world. As we embark on this journey together, I am reminded of the wisdom of Peter Drucker, who once said, "The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. It is to act with yesterday's logic." This quote captures the essence of what we aim to achieve throughout this week. The world is changing faster than ever, and our ability to adapt, innovate, and grow with the times will determine our success in the face of uncertainty. We cannot afford to rely on old paradigms. Instead, we must embrace new thinking, new strategies, and new opportunities. This year's conference continues to explore our central theme, transformational growth through sustainability, digitalization, and diversity. These three pillars are not just timely and relevant, they are critical to our collective success as financial executives and business leaders in the modern era. FINEX remains committed to pushing the boundaries of innovation, promoting inclusive growth, and driving sustainability across industries. Our goal is to empower each of you to bring these principles to life in your own organizations, paving the way for a more prosperous and sustainable future. Each session has been carefully curated to support this theme, and we are hopeful that by the end of the week, you will leave inspired and equipped to take on the challenges of our rapidly evolving world. We open with today's topic, Global Perspectives on Sustainability, Diversity, and Digitalization in the Modern Era, which sets the stage for the entire conference. With sustainability becoming a critical driver of decision-making, diversity being acknowledged as a key enabler of innovation, and digitalization shaping the future of finance, today's discussions will lay the cornerstone for the detailed insights to follow. Tomorrow, we shift the focus to the critical matter of climate change in the event organized by the Good Governance and Environment Committee. We will explore climate risks and opportunities, building climate change resilience, a topic that highlights not just the risks, but also the incredible opportunities to innovate and build a sustainable, climate-resilient future. As financial executives, we hold a unique position in influencing both policy and action in this regard. On Wednesday, the Women in Finance Committee and the Young Finance Officers Committee will host an event titled Navigating the Generational Gap Towards Transformative Growth. This session will highlight the importance of intergenerational collaboration in achieving transformational growth, showing how diversity and age and experience can be a powerful driver of innovation and progress. Thursday's event, organized by the Professional Development Committee and the Ethics Committee, will tackle one of the most exciting and fast-evolving areas in finance today, artificial intelligence. Their session, Practical Applications of AI to Achieve Philippine Development Goals, will explore the role of AI in accelerating growth, enhancing decision-making, and solving some of our country's most pressing challenges. Finally, Friday's session themed Empower Progress, Inspire Change will conclude our week with a focus on the most urgent challenges facing the Filipino people. From discussing how to advance towards a healthy Filipino, to addressing hunger and food security, to educating and developing the digital Filipino, this day will be dedicated to empowering our nation's progress and inspiring real, lasting change. With such an impressive lineup of sessions and speakers, I encourage you all to take full advantage of the opportunities this week offers. Let us challenge ourselves to think critically, collaborate openly, and innovate fearlessly. Together, we can drive transformational growth that will create a sustainable, inclusive, and digitally empowered future for the Philippines. Thank you once again for your presence, your support, and your unwavering commitment to excellence. Let us make this an inspiring and impactful week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your speech, President Toti. Now, as we are all aware, mounting a week-long conference as big as this is not an easy task. And one big part of this year's success is because of our partners and sponsors. To thank them, may I call the Liaison Director of the FINEX Week Committee, Mignon Ramos, to express our heartfelt thanks.
Good morning. The 56th FINEX Week Conference would not have been possible
The
if not
DNA
for
of
our
business today
sponsors.
is changing. It's no longer.
Thank you. So, our platinum sponsors, Ayala Land Inc., Forecasting, you'll get tired. So, Forecasting and Planning Technologies Inc., and Shell Pilipinas Corporation. Our diamond sponsors, IT Group Inc., PlanView, and Stronghold Insurance Incorporated. Our gold sponsors, ASEN, AC Health, Asticom Group of Companies, BDO Unibank Inc., Bank of the Philippine Islands, Deloitte Philippines, KPMG RBG Manabat and Company, Landco Pacific, Land Bank of the Philippines, Landers Superstore, Metrobank, Oceana Gold, PwC Philippines, Romulo Mabanta Sayok and De Los Angeles, Security Bank, SGV and Company, Sun Life Investment and Trust Management Corporation, UBS, and Vivant Corporation. Our patron sponsors, Aboitiz Power, Accenture Philippines, BPI MS Insurance, Converge ICT Solutions, DeMark Beauty, East West Bank Corporation, Ipsos Inc., Liberty Insurance Incorporated, Malayan Insurance Inc., McDonald's Philippines, MWell, FTI Consulting Inc., Ovia Land, Philippine Equity Partners Inc., PNA Grant Thornton, Regis Partners Inc., San Miguel Corporation, and Unilab. Alagang tunay, alagang Pilipino, alagang Unilab. May add, no? Minor sponsors, Crystal Blue, Flight Travel Express, Gardenia, Isla Petroleum and Gas Corporation, Jollibee Foods Corporation, Metro Pacific Corporation, Nature Tint, PBCom, ST Telemedia, and Santa Lucia Land. We'd also like to thank our official media partners, Business World, Manila Bulletin, the Manila Times, and the Philippine Star, and our technology partner, GlueUp. Ladies and gentlemen, the FINEX officers and members, and especially the FINEX Week Committee, would like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, Mignon. And of course, a huge thank you to all our sponsors and partners. And I think now we can give our partners and sponsors a big round of applause. Okay, I know we all want to get into the discussion and hear our speakers talk. So now I introduce our speaker for today. May I call on FVP and Head for Strategy and Transformation of Aboitiz Infracapital, Ms. Margarita Villanueva.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so honored to introduce an important pillar in the UK's diplomatic mission here in the Philippines, Deputy Ambassador Alastair White. Alastair brings with him a wealth of experience and a deep commitment to fostering the strong ties between the United Kingdom and the Philippines. He is a career diplomat with over 10 years' experience in South Asia and Africa. He worked as a Deputy High Commissioner at the British High Commission in Sierra Leone and as the head for the FCDO Global Trade Program. During previous postings in Pakistan and the UK, he focused on political work and strategic finance. We can all see that his career has been marked by a dedication to international cooperation, economic development, and cultural exchange, which are critical in our increasingly interconnected world. As Deputy Ambassador, Alistair plays a crucial role in strengthening our bilateral relationship, addressing shared challenges and exploring opportunities for collaboration. His support towards the Philippines' plans for rail transit infrastructure, with the recently signed cooperation between Crossrail International and our own Department of Transportation, will go a long way in helping us realize the Build Better More, or BBM, infrastructure program. Alistair is not only a skilled diplomat, but also a passionate advocate for the values we hold dear, such as democracy, human rights, and sustainability. His participation in the Mindanao Development Forum earlier this year showed his and the UK's support for the peace process and climate change adaptation in the South, which can help foster stability and resilience in the region. His leadership and vision will undoubtedly guide our efforts in the months and years ahead. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Ambassador Alistair White to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests. Thank you very, very much for that very flattering introduction too. It's a real pleasure and honour to be here today. Thank you for inviting and including the British Embassy and the British government in this event. And it's wonderful to see so many experts and industry leaders in one place. And I know it's going to be a great and very productive 5 days. The modern world, though, is an increasingly complex place, and climate change and nature loss are profound and universal sources of global disorder. The emergence of artificial intelligence has brought us to a crossroads in technology, and widening inequality is bringing challenges to societal stability. And as we navigate these complexities, it's imperative that our drive for economic growth aligns with our broader responsibilities to the environment and the planet that we live on, and responsibilities to each other as human beings. And this morning, I want to reflect on those responsibilities and how that we can integrate them into our growth journey. And to do so, I'll talk a bit about the United Kingdom's growth and a particular focus on our approach to climate change. And then I'll turn a bit to the UK government's vision for a sustainable planet and what that can mean for our partnerships here in the Philippines. In the United Kingdom, we do have a proud history of innovation. Isaac Newton invented the first reflecting telescope in 1668 to change astronomy forever. We do like our history in the UK. The first mass-produced toothbrush was invented by William Addis in around 1780. And Peter Durand came up with the tin can for all of your corned beef and spam needs in 1810. And of course, we also claim some of the real titans in innovation, in inventions that reshaped the global economy, the steam engine, and of course, more recently, the World Wide Web. And there's always been a real openness in the UK to new technologies and new ways to drive economic growth. But sadly, at times, this has come at the expense of the environment, or it's been implemented in a way that has not included the most vulnerable in our society. But for me, the UK growth narrative is no longer one of growth or sustainability. It is one of growth or no growth, or sustainable growth or no growth. And since 1990, our economy has grown by over 82%, but we have managed to reduce our emissions by 53% during that period compared to their 1990 levels. And at no point have we sacrificed on innovation, jobs, or income in this journey. Instead, we've just fostered new industries and new ways of doing things. And take energy. The transition away from fossil fuels has been driven by 3 political imperatives. Number 1, sustainability. The case has been made, the evidence is irrefutable. Fossil fuels are not sustainable. Energy security. Any state which relies on the imports of fossil fuels, which is therefore made to be a price taker, not a price maker, cannot say that it has energy security. And affordability. We have seen a dramatic drop in the price of renewables as new technology has come online. And in the UK, the price of wind power, offshore wind, has halved, for example. The price of batteries has dropped by 2/3. And that means that on the basis of the prices in the UK's most recent auction, renewables are now the cheapest form of power to build and operate in the United Kingdom. And just over 10 years ago, the UK still relied on coal for 40% of all of our energy needs. But today, we have the largest fixed-bottom offshore wind farms in the world and the world's first floating wind farm. We've installed enough solar power to power over 3.5 million homes. And today, the 30th of September 2024, I'm delighted to be able to stand here and say that the UK's very last coal-fired power station will cease operations today, marking the end of domestic coal power generation in our country. But of course, we have a long, long way to go. But our new government has put clean power at the heart of its agenda, one of its 5 key missions for governing the country. And how will they do this? Well, firstly, a political advisory team in our Department for Energy Security and Net Zero has been established specifically to ensure that we meet our 2030 NDC targets to adhere to our commitment of net zero by 2050. A new national wealth fund will catalyse investment into clean technology infrastructure, in many ways mirroring how the Maharlika Fund here could prove to be a catalyst for the green transition in Philippines. And we will establish Great British Energy, planned government investment body and publicly owned energy generation company. And it will work with business to invest in frontier energy technology like green hydrogen and tidal. And this will complement Innovate UK, that's the UK's innovation agency. Innovate UK provides funding for new technologies and supports collaborations between startups, business and academia. And we will continue ongoing investment in smart technologies that allow businesses and households to monitor their energy consumption in real time, leading to significant reductions in waste and a lower carbon footprint and cost savings. And then carbon pricing mechanisms, like the UK emissions trading scheme, provide new financial incentives for companies to reduce emissions and innovate in low carbon technologies. And there are also tax breaks and incentives for companies investing in R&D related to clean energy. And I really could go on, but in the interest of time, I just want to leave it there for that as a snapshot of what we're doing to invest in our low carbon energy industry. Because it's important that we're here, and we will be focusing in the next 5 days, on the importance of a just energy transition, a fair transition. So fostering new technologies and supporting businesses that grow and innovate are fantastic. It's something that we all want to see, but that's only part of the story. If this transition is to succeed, the government must act also as a guarantor of fairness. People must also be at the heart of this transition. We must make sure that we create good jobs, reskill workers, and improve the quality of life for our citizens. And in the UK, a new British jobs board, a new British jobs bonus, will provide capital grants to companies who are creating green jobs in UK industrial heartlands and coastal communities. A new TVET growth and skills levy will see our large employers pay in a portion of their profits into a central fund. And then they can then claim back this money by offering apprenticeships in critical sectors for green growth. And this is giving young people and those retraining the opportunity to develop the skills to build careers for the future. Now, I'm delighted that such a large part of the conference this week also focuses not just on job creation, but inclusive job creation. Because we know that diversity in industry leads to greater innovation and resilience. By embracing varied perspectives and ways of thinking, we can unlock new ideas and create better processes and foster a richer pool of national talent. And this includes neurodiversity. And the UK government offers a range of support and initiatives to help neurodivergent individuals. Our Department for Work and Pensions runs an Access to Work scheme, which helps disabled people and those with neurodivergent conditions overcome workplace barriers. And Access to Work can fund workplace adaptations, such as assistive technology, software, and equipment, things like speech and speech-to-text software. It also deploys specialist support workers who can provide on-the-job assistance and coaching. And it offers mental health support to manage the unique challenges that can be encountered in the workplace, particularly for neurodivergent individuals. And beyond this flagship initiative, we are proud for many years of our Disability Confidence Scheme, which provides the resources and guidance to companies on how to make workplaces accessible and inclusive for neurodivergent individuals, including forums for sharing best practice across industry and proactively taking persons with neurodivergent conditions or disabilities through the interview stage. And we have government-supported internships, which help young people aged 16 to 24 with disabilities or neurodivergent conditions get a job, getting into the job workplace with a personalised study programme. It's about taking a proactive and strengths-based approach to employment, helping people build the right experience with the right support to find the right job for them, which will support the evolving economy. And what does this holistic approach mean for growth in our international relations? Well, put simply, we know as the UK, we cannot operate with any credibility internationally if we do not have our own house in order at home. And as our new Foreign Secretary David Lammy set out in his Q lecture 2 weeks ago, our climate diplomacy is not do as I say, not as I do, but rather one of partnership, focused on mutual priorities which can unlock sustainable, inclusive growth in both of our countries, in the UK and the Philippines. And that's why our Foreign Secretary set out 3 priority areas for international climate action that the UK wants to lead, with the explicit intention of driving equitable global growth and stability. Firstly, the Foreign Secretary announced that we will be building a new global clean power alliance to accelerate the transition and tackle significant challenges to delivering clean power. Secondly, there's a recognition that we must collectively unlock more climate and nature finance if economies to evolve and the industry grow. We want to help the UK, we want in the UK to help businesses leverage the City of London as a leading global green finance centre. We want to help drive reforms of the multilateral development banks to ensure that they make better use of their balance sheets and to reform and release more funds to address the critical climate issues. And we want to not just halt biodiversity loss, we want to reverse biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss is as much a threat as changes to our climate. And as one of the world's most mega biodiverse countries and a fellow blue economy nation in the Philippines, there are a multitude of emerging solutions, not just to protect biodiversity, but to drive growth by doing so. So to conclude, today I've just tried to give you a snapshot of what we in the UK are doing and are prioritising, and some of the tools that are being deployed here, and we will continue to work in partnership in delivering with the Philippines. I hope it's given you some insight, maybe even inspired, because to me, the message of the UK's journey is clear. Do not let the blockers or the delayers drive this agenda. Do not sail at the pace of the slowest ship, because the clean energy transition is the economic and energy security fight of our time. Thank you very much indeed.
Hey, thank you so much, Deputy Ambassador Alistair White, for sharing with us the UK's experience in development, while at the same time maintaining sustainability, diversity, and digitalization. So hopefully we can learn from your experience. And now, let's hear the perspective of our panelists, starting with the CFO of ASEAN Corporation, Mr. Jonathan Bach. Sorry, hold on. Okay, I'm sorry for that. So there has been some change of plans. I think we will go straight to the panel discussion where everybody can share their perspective. So let's just wait for the chairs to be set up for us to move to the next part of the presentations. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to call to the stage the panelists who will react to the speech of our Deputy Ambassador. So again, may I call on the CFO of ASEN, Mr. Jonathan Bach, and then followed by the co-founder and chairman of Alternergy Holding Corporation, Mr. Vince Perez. Southeast Asia Region Director of Water.org, Ms. Gay Santos as well, to join us in the panel discussion. And may I call back to the stage our Deputy Ambassador, Alistair White.
So good morning, everyone. This is a very exciting session. Normally, this kind of session, it warrants 1 week for each topic at the UN. As you may be aware, very timely, last week we had the UN Climate Week with the UN General Assembly, covering climate change alone. So we have diversity, we have digitalization as well. And we're starting it with a high note. Very inspiring, Deputy Ambassador. All the strides, achievements that UK have made, I've been looking all over the indices, the scorecards for World Economic Forum. It's very consistent. UK has always been in the top 10. And with that said, I think with all this, the shift in mindset is the most challenging part. Wherein, how do you orchestrate a one vision for a country, for a company, to move one direction and sustain that direction and achieve what you have achieved as a nation? So with that, I throw in the first question to you, I mean, what was the process? Because it is a process. You start with which comes first, enabling policies, actions, sometimes it's parallel. Maybe you can just give us a glimpse of that journey. What was the element that made it all work together? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for recognizing the achievements of the UK government, because I think, as you say, it's not an easy journey, and there's been a strong need to bring people with you and to bring businesses with you. One thing that I can say from a government perspective is we have the very unfair advantage of being able to make laws. And legislation has been a strong underpinning of the UK's journey in this space. And you can trace it back, I think, to 2008, where we first signed the UK Environment Act there. And that enshrines the targets and the pathways that the UK needs to take forward into law. So government is, legally required to pursue our net zero targets, to achieve the standards and the markets that you set out. And then, of course, we're able to, over that's nearly 2 decades ago or 15 years ago, continue to take the British people, and I think most essentially the private sector, on that journey to also show that a sustainable and green economy is also a profitable and sustainable one, not just one that increases the cost base.
Thank you very much, Deputy Ambassador. So 2 things I got from there. One is, I mean, what cannot be measured cannot be achieved. So it's critical to set targets and the participation of private sector. So we move on to the private sector panelists here. Vince, Jonathan, maybe we can start by, maybe you can briefly introduce your company, because not everybody is familiar with it, but at the same time address the question. I mean, how do you instill that mindset to shift in this very relevant and timely, I would call it more than advocacy, but a call for action?
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, I want to thank FINEX for inviting us to speak here with Jonathan. I just was checking my notes. The last time I spoke with FINEX was in 2004, 20 years ago when I was Energy Secretary. So long overdue, and I'm embarrassed that our company's logo is not in the list that Mignon mentioned. Send us a bill next time. So our logo is still there, count on it. I just want to acknowledge also the fact that Deputy Ambassador Alistair is here. The UK has always been a big supporter of the energy transition in the Philippines. Even when I was Energy Secretary in 2001, there was already active engagement, whether on the trade side, investment side. Biomass in the Philippines was really started by a UK firm, Browns Oak, or a UK-led firm, and I know it's part of ASEAN now. The UK actually is a leader in marine power. Scotland has many pilot and commercially viable ocean-related power, which they're trying to replicate. And part of the privatization of the Napocor was also based on what the UK government went through. We were trying to avoid mistakes made, lessons learned, and the fact that we have a diversified power sector here is really partly supported by what the UK government has taken the lead in terms of privatization. By the way, when I first got this invitation by 2 of my independent directors, one of which is here, Marivic Españo and Tere Marcial, for a while I thought there was going to be a Hollywood actor who's going to be present here. So if you're here attending, hoping to see an Hollywood actor, let's just pretend that Jonathan is Matt and I'm Damon. Okay, so the question was that when we founded Alternergy in 2008, it was really a spin-off, and I was talking to Tito Bengzon of when we used to be the owner of El Nido Resorts. And culture there is so important because if the employees are happy, the guests are happy. And so when we had El Nido Resorts then, we had a triple bottom line. As you see, sometimes it's profit, people, and planet. But when we started Alternergy, we added a fourth dimension to it to make it a quadruple bottom line, which is to also split the people to the host community as well as the employees. So there are really two aspects of people, the host community and the people. Lesson learned from my time in government, we would have local governments who were a little bit hostile. By coincidence, it was a coal plant. And they barricaded this Napocor plant because they were not happy. We couldn't even bring in coal supply. So I realized working with the host community is equally important as the people that join us. Maybe, Gabe, before we pass on to Jonathan, one of the values that we have of recruiting employees, we have 7 values, but probably the most important one is love for the environment. Because if you're going to work in a renewable company like ASEAN or Alternergy, it's really helping the environment. So we have a lot of former mining engineers who've left mining to join us, former environmentalists who have joined us, and a lot of them just volunteer without being nudged. If we have to do a groundbreaking in a run-of-river hydro in Ifugao or a groundbreaking on an island for a wind project, they just love being outdoors. So love for nature, love for the environment is a key component of the values of the employees. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to hear. I mean, extending it to the community. And I have a follow-up question on that. Jonathan?
Thank you very much. For those who aren't familiar with ASEAN, we're part of the Ayala Group, which obviously is a very venerable and well-respected conglomerate here in the Philippines. As you all know, we are, I guess, the youngest part of the group in terms of the core businesses. It was only founded in 2011 when we had 0 megawatts. And Vince knows this very well because it all really started with what's now a relatively small wind project in Ilocos Norte called Northwind. And it's actually now at a point where we're thinking about whether we refurbish it or repower it, but that's where ASEAN actually started, or AC Energy, as it was back then. Now, the truth was that our company has been through a journey, if you like, where if you go back 10 years to the kind of mid-2010s, we were actually dominated by coal as a company. Because at that time, frankly speaking, in the early 2010s, renewables was not yet at a point here in the Philippines to really scale up and move the needle, partly because the costs were high. The UK has always been a leader in offshore wind. So even by then, the UK, for example, was quite advanced on offshore wind, but we were not able to be in that position here in the Philippines, frankly speaking. So at that time, our company, became a heavy investor in coal plants, which we as a company have actually divested, starting in around sort of the end of 2017. And because right from the very beginning, we knew that we wanted renewables and sustainability to be a core part of what we did. But frankly, it was difficult at that point in time. And especially in the context of the Philippines, where demand growth is very high in most developed countries, demand growth has actually been flat or down a bit as energy has become more efficiently used. But that's not true in a country like the Philippines, which has one of the fastest GDP growth rates in the world, and also has one of the fastest electricity consumption demand growth rates in the world, 5-6% in both cases. So in order to meet that demand, what do you do? And to be honest, back in the early 2010s, the answer from the government, not least, was building a lot of thermal capacity, very new large coal-fired power stations. That was the reality in order to be able to deliver power to the country. Now, fast forward to where we are today, and the good news is that renewables have become much cheaper to deploy, and particularly at scale. So there is a moratorium on new coal-fired plants here in the Philippines. We're obviously a long way from a coal plant, the last coal plant shutting down, as has been the case in the UK. But sustainability, I think, and Toti's been with the Ayala Group for a long time. I think we can put our hands on our hearts and say that our sustainability has been central to what the group is about for a very long time. And obviously now with ACEN, we're able to be at the forefront of that in terms of delivering renewable energy, not just here in the Philippines, but also in Vietnam, India, Indonesia, Australia. Those are the other countries in which we operate. Because while renewable energy is not quite yet able to take the place of large coal, etc., to provide baseload power, for a company like us, we can become a pretty, really quite large player on a regional basis, and that's been our goal. There's a lot of other things that we can talk about, and I suspect some of your questions will get to that.
Yes, I have a list of questions. We can go on and on for a month here. But anyway, so building on what you said, the focus on the community, one of the experience I have as the Southeast Asia Director for Water.org is like, how do you maximize resources to be able to really help every person, every island? And UK is comprised of islands. Philippines is an archipelago. I mean, we have Indonesia too under Water.org. How do you ensure, because at the end of the day, it's a business. So you have to move where the congestion is, where the populated areas is. And that results to, I mean, the opposite side of diversity is inequality. How do you manage as a nation to make sure that there's equal opportunity, business opportunities, opportunity to have that piece of the pie when it comes to sustainability, diversity, digitalization, and the whole 9 yards of SDG? So I'll start with Deputy Ambassador, then Jonathan, then Vince. Deputy Ambassador.
Thank you. I wouldn't want to speak too much on behalf of what is a very collective effort for the whole of the UK government. I think I will start talking of the coal-powered power station. As I said, we're celebrating the fact that it's ceasing operations. However, I need to sort of own up to a little bit of discomfort in celebrating that because, of course, that's jobs, and that has been the centre of somebody's community for a long time. That's provided employment and economic contribution to that area. So what you talk about, understanding how everybody can benefit from the transition, I think it's a critical part of actually getting popular support, which is essential. And so, I mean, I touched on briefly in my speech about ensuring that we're upskilling people who previously had worked in the coal-powered industry, to ensure that they have access to training and upskilling so that they're able to access and benefit from the new economic opportunities which we are embracing, and also embracing at extraordinary speed. When I talked about the journey over just 10, 15 years, that's quite a long time. It's quite a short period for entire communities and industries to transition and ensure that people aren't being left behind. The UK has, we're a maritime nation. We certainly have fewer islands than Philippines, but so do most places. But there's also been a very, very concerted effort to make sure that access to some of the infrastructure which that supports growth, such as in basics like the internet in some of the more remote areas. Being able to access the internet, being online, is absolutely essential to any kind of business investing in an area. You can't really have a startup unless you have internet. Even the most basic sort of grocery sort of store, having an online presence is absolutely essential. So, the UK continues to invest in some of these critical infrastructure areas to ensure that the dividends of technology and technological growth are available to as many people in the UK as possible. And then also touched on just making sure that our businesses and our education establishments are of sort of recruiting and training from as diverse a pool as possible, so everybody is included in the new opportunities. And whilst I focused, heavily on people with disabilities or neurodivergence, there's an awful lot that we also do as a government to ensure that we are encouraging senior leadership positions for ethnic minorities, making sure we have the right representation of women in boardrooms, really focusing on closing the gender pay gap, making sure that all of these dividends are equally obtained across the society. And again, I think that's something where we, as a government, can work absolutely hand in hand with private sector partners, but also encourage and demonstrate actually that reasonable adjustments actually can lead to increased productivity, ultimately increased prosperity and profitability. So we can support businesses maybe helping some of the initial investment hurdles, and then share in the longer term gains.
Thank you for those insights. I think one thing I really like is there's action that comes immediately after the shift in mindset. It's sustainable growth or no growth at all, right? Jonathan?
Your question touched on how do we ensure that in the archipelago that we have...
Even outside the Philippines, because you're operating outside the Philippines as well, right?
Yes, but I think one of the important points is how do you get renewable energy to benefit not just Luzon, but many other parts of the country. But interestingly, this actually goes to something that is also relevant whether you're in Luzon or Java or Vietnam, which is if you're going to rely on renewables to deliver most of your energy needs, you need to put storage together with the generation of renewable energy. If you're on an island and you're relying on solar power instead of a diesel generator, that's great in the middle of the day. It doesn't help you very much in the middle of the night. Now, what you can do is overbuild the solar, store excess generation during the middle of the day, and then you can release it. The more that we do that, whether it's on a small island grid or for the whole of Luzon, for that matter, and then connected through to Visayas and Mindanao, the more that we can do that, the more that renewable energy will actually become the main answer to how do we power everything. One important statistic, or it's more than a factoid, but if you were to decarbonize everything so that there is no longer any form of carbon used in transport, with the possible exception of aircraft, or industry, homes, your offices, hotels, whatever it may be, today you would need to have 3 times as much power generation on planet Earth as we currently do. 3 times. And that means, and I'm talking about renewable generation here. So if you imagine the scale that our industry is actually confronted by in the decarbonization and electrification journey, it's actually staggering. Now, one of the key parts of that is energy storage, batteries, pumped hydro. It doesn't matter how you store it in a way, as long as it's relatively cheap. And I think one of the points we've already heard is that all of these technologies have become lower in price as time has moved on. And battery storage, thankfully, is also now in that category. But one of the best ways for us to deliver renewable energy for everybody, including on smaller islands, is to make sure we're thinking about the storage component right from the get-go. That would be a key point. And actually, probably Vince is further along on that than we are arguing.
That's wonderful to know. I mean, I think the key there, it has to be low cost and effective.
Yes.
Yes. Vince?
The nature of renewable is that it has to be rural based, other than solar rooftop on commercial malls or buildings. So by the nature, wind is rural. It's addressing your point in terms of how does one distribute economic activity. So wind are either in the north in the Philippines, and by the nature of wind resource, they tend to be in Luzon and certain parts of Visayas. Unfortunately, the wind resource in Mindanao is not as viable. Hydro, of course, mainly in northern Luzon and Mindanao. Some parts in Visayas, it's mainly northern Luzon and Mindanao. And, well, solar is practically from north to south. But there are certain solar irradiation that varies. Believe it or not, the intensity of solar depends on certain places in the country. It's not the same all throughout. So whether you get sunburn in southern Mindanao or Aparid, it varies depending on the solar. But, okay, on Alternergy, we try to do a triple play. We try to do both wind, solar, and hydro with different EBITDA per megawatt as a result of that. For our run-of-river hydros, it's really hard work, very challenging, a lot of civil works, but the impact to the community is probably far more important to them, because these are really places where indigenous people have survived for centuries with very little economic activity. So relatively for the small projects we do in run-of-river hydro, it's a disproportionate impact to the economy of the local folks. Now, back to island grids, we have ventured to perhaps baby steps compared to ASEAN, getting outside the Philippines, and we built a solar battery in the Republic of Palau. It's one of the nearest island republics of the Philippines. It's a very good energy transition because they were importing expensive diesel all the way from Taiwan or Singapore to this far-flung island. And it's so expensive, so solar with battery was really to try to maintain the grid of this small island. It's challenging, given that you could have a cloud event that passes over the solar farm and you need to ramp up the battery. The battery has to be ready, and then when the cloud event passes away from the solar farm, you need to bring it down again. But it's something that we are replicating. We're looking at other projects in the Pacific Islands. We have a mantra, which I picked up from my El Nido days, which is, we don't mind doing business in a week where we could get stuck on a weekend. So Palau, I'm a diver. I don't mind getting stuck there on a weekend because we go scuba diving. And at once we got an invitation to look at solar battery in the Maldives. Can you imagine that? But we turned it down because they were going to be very small projects on different islands. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the SPUG islands here, the small islands, sorry, to do renewable and energy storage. But really, as Jonathan said, we must have more energy storage, and that could be pump storage, pump hydro, solar, it could be flywheel, it could be battery farms, in order to inject intermittent renewables. Geothermal is the only base load that we have. I believe ASEAN still has some exposure in geothermal. And I'm glad that the administration is trying to jumpstart geothermal now with one of the upcoming green energy auctions. So there you go.
Yeah, very, very promising. I mean, I have one wish as it relates to water. I hope they will find a technology on desalination for these islands. But, okay, building on climate change. Nobody's spared. Even UK is experiencing flood, droughts. We have El Nino. El Nino, I mean, there's so much resulting to drought, drying up the wells, which is a source of water. But the alternative energy is also adversely affected. I mean, we had below normal levels of water for our dams, which is the alternative energy. That's the alternative energy. So the question is, I mean, how are you able to manage? I mean, you have El Nino, La Nina, too much rain. Again, it adversely affected our sources of energy, our resources. How are you doing it differently to be able to reach 2030 roadmap to renewable energy? Jonathan, I'll start with you because I've listened to a couple of things you've said through LinkedIn. What are you doing differently? I mean, can we fast track reaching 2030 with a 35% target on renewable energy?
I mean, I'll be honest, I think that will be a challenge. One of the issues we've got in our industry is just how hard it is to develop these projects, frankly speaking. And that's not just true here, it's true everywhere. And in fact, the Philippines is probably slightly a little better than most places that we work in. In developed countries, whether it be the UK or Australia, getting a very large new wind farm done onshore is very, very challenging. I can tell you, even in Australia, where we have a lot of very large wind farms in development, and there's so much, you think, oh, there's so much land, but even there, trust me, it's a big challenge. So the reality is that for all of these government set goals here in the Philippines, 35% renewable generation by 2030, we would love to see that happen, of course. And we are honestly doing everything that we can to push forward on that. But you've got to remember that to meet that goal, given the pace of growth of demand here in the Philippines, you'd need to build something like from today, another 17 to 18 gigawatts of renewable energy. That's a lot. That's a lot in what is now only really kind of 5 years or so. I mean, for people like Vince and ourselves who are in the business, we can tell you that that is not an easy thing to achieve. It could be done, and the great news is that the government here is full square behind the drive for renewable energy and is doing, I think, all the right things. But one of the biggest problems we have in order to deliver these really huge projects at scale is transmission. If you don't have the wires in between your power plant and the customers, then it doesn't matter. And to be frank with you, getting transmission done has been a real issue. The plans, and I'll just be candid about it, the plans that NGCP have are not advanced enough for what we need in order to really, or what the government needs in order to deliver on that vision. It's just the reality. And that's not a unique problem to the Philippines at all. Problems with transmission are really at the crux of it in almost every country you're in. So it's what I'm saying applies in pretty much all of the countries in which we operate. As I said, I think the good news here in the Philippines is that there are government targets that are achievable with a very good following wind, and the government is very much behind what we're all trying to do. But there are these other factors that are at least beyond our control directly that need to be solved in order to make it happen.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the truthfulness behind that.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. You raise a very good point that transmission is a big constraint. It's not just for renewable, for any power plant, whether it's a coal plant, an LNG plant, a renewable. So for all of those of you who are in banking, and when you look at some of our project models, you're going to see that some of us are spending money on building the transmission asset, which is a drag on returns, but sometimes that's the only way we could build the plant on time. And so the transmission that we're building, whether it's a substation or a transmission line, is a way to jumpstart the project ahead of what NGCP hopes to build. I remember talking to the president and says, when can we have a substation in this region? And he says, oh yeah, 2033. My goodness, that's far too late. So part of the thing, I'm sure you have the challenge in your solar in Zambales. And for our wind project in Tanay, we have to build the solar other substation ahead of NGCP. But hopefully we'll get that reimbursed, hopefully, as part of our project model. But in terms of the other point we raised, funny enough, you mentioned that I was in a coffee shop in Melbourne, and a lady beside me asked, "So what do you do, Vince?" "Well, I built wind farms," and I got a negative reaction from her that they hate these windmills. Luckily, we don't have that here. Our wind farms are tourist attractions. Speaking from Bangi Bay and Tanay, you should see our Pililla wind farm over the weekend. It's full of motorbikes who are enjoying it. But the challenge, I think, I wish we have the landmass of Australia. Because really, at the end of the day, with 110 million people here, we don't have as much land for those type of mega renewable projects, whether it's wind or solar. By the nature of the transmission grid, we end up doing cookie cutter size projects that can inject to the grid. As much as we'd like to do a 3,500 megawatt solar, you're going to have to build a massive substation there. So we tend to do cookie cutter size of whether it's wind or solar so that we could inject into the substation. The point that you raise about climate change, for ASEAN and for us, we're not just a single vertical renewable company. If we were 100% only solar, then on a La Nina year, we'll have production below our estimated cost. So for ASEAN and for Alternergy, we're multiple play. We have what we call triple play, whether it's wind, solar, run-of-river hydro. So on a El Nino year, solar does better. Wind may or may not do better in an El Nino year. On a La Nina year, of course, our hydro will do well. But funny enough, if there's a major tropical depression over our wind farms, the wind may not actually generates additional output for the wind farm. So it depends really whether we have a localized tropical depression over our wind farm site. So, but diversification of renewable is key to address climate change. It is our main risk, climate change, the seasonality, the fluctuation of La Nina and El Nino.
So Vince, thank you. I was actually looking at your company website, and I really appreciate the diversity of your portfolio. So thank you for that. So Deputy Ambassador, you have the private sector. I inferred from what you said earlier, government cannot do it alone. And you have what you mentioned, the Clean Power Alliance. Can you elaborate on that? Is that specific to UK, or is it an undertaking that can be open to anyone in the private sector to make things happen for 2030?
Yes, I don't have all the details of Clean Power Alliance, but it will be a very inclusive instrument, and we'll be looking for, hopefully Philippines to be part of that too. And sitting here in Philippines with the government, which has been so very, very much on the front foot and co-chairing different environmental panels alongside the UK, and being very, very active in COP and in developing the national defined contributions. And here in the Philippines, where we are, is if not the one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. Every single year, seeing almost certainly billions of dollars of loss as a result of climate change already. And I think I saw a World Bank report last year saying that climate change in the current trajectory will impact GDP in the Philippines by as much as 7.5%, which is exactly the current levels of growth in Philippines. So climate change alone, if we just continue as we are here in the Philippines, will completely keep Philippines' economic growth in the wrong place. It's and I think that's where how can the international mechanisms work better, because we know that there's not enough money internationally from the public sector to meet all of the sustainable development goals. So we have to look at other means of doing that. And I mentioned there's some technical stuff. So the multilateral development banks, the ADB, the AIIB, the World Bank, there's ways of freeing money or capital potentially from those balance sheets to ensure that there is greater support to government to enable it, because everything we've been talking about doesn't just take a long time. It is incredibly expensive. No matter how much these technologies are coming down in price, the scale at which they need to be delivered in order to affect any change just means that it's still going to be expensive by sheer volume. And then also is the UK, and I'm sure that other countries are doing this, but we have mechanisms such as the UK export finance, where we can help companies or help de-risk investments by underwriting some of these larger investments, because if the UK acts as a guarantor or part funding, then hopefully that can de-risk and invite some industry to move into some of the possibly less certain investment spaces. And then there's other things that we're trying to do. So British international investments, so they're what called our international development finance mechanisms. Again, it's about using UK and other countries' funds to catalyse investments, to de-risk, to underwrite, to recognise that these aren't problems which are just going to be solved by taxpayers' money being spent by government. Actually, there needs to be that sort of virtuous partnership to support innovation, to de-risk innovative investments, and in doing so, hopefully that's what will sort of create that virtuous technological advance cycle which addresses some of the problems which are currently out of reach, whilst decreasing the price to deliver what we know already works. But it was also interesting to hear you talking about wind power and things like that. On our domestic political scenes, some of these arguments are still to be had. So in the UK, you talked about transmission going through leafy Suffolk. Pylons are extremely big, not particularly great tourist attractions. And so, there's some realities behind addressing these, which governments are going to have to address themselves. But I'm hoping I will speak actually a little bit for our new government. You see, our Foreign Secretary has three main big priorities. One is addressing this energy transition globally. So making sure that we as the UK, as a P5, G7 economy, can act as a leader, actually demonstrate that this can be done, and not, as he's saying, not just saying do as we do and then do as we say and then do something completely different, but also really addressing some of the other things which I think have been neglected, about making sure that we have finance where it's not currently flowing in loss restoration, and also addressing vulnerabilities. So in a country like Philippines, we need to, where the loss and damage fund will be hosted here in the Philippines, these are areas where more money is still needed, and making sure that we're using our different instruments to get money into the loss and damage. And then when we talk about biodiversity, we're not just talking about beautiful coloured birds and rare species of fish, although as a diver, I'm all for the rare species of fish, but also biodiversity is the first line of defence. Keeping the mangroves, recovering the mangroves here, that is what's going to protect parts of Palawan, that's going to protect so many of the islands here. Nature is one of our greatest allies in addressing climate vulnerability. So ensuring that we can try and walk back and reverse some of the damage which has absolutely indisputably been done over the last few decades.
Thank you, Deputy Ambassador. It's very refreshing to hear all the initiatives. I hope we'll hear more about the alliance. I think one thing that I want to raise with Vince and Jonathan, when you spoke about, Deputy Ambassador, about neurodivergence, diversity, and at least 15% of UK population are neurodivergent. And it's so good to hear that you have really achieved something to promote inclusion. As leaders of your respective organization, Jonathan, I want to get your take on how, we're good in gender diversity. You have women in the board, in management, I mean, government positions. But what about inclusion of neurodivergence? I mean, has this been a thought, or are there actions taken within your organization on this?
I'll be honest and say that it's not been particularly high on the agenda at this point. We've obviously been putting a lot of effort into making sure that we've got gender balance. In fact, we now have more women in head office positions than we have men. I mean, at the plant level, you know, in the energy industry, you tend to find it's still rather male-dominated. Not entirely, but certainly we've been going out of our way to make sure that in the rest of the organization, we do look for gender equality, and as I said, in fact, we have more women than men outside of the plant level, as it were. We are very conscious, I think at a group level in the Ayala group, that there are other forms of diversity and equality that we need to aim for. And at a group level, there have been strides being taken in this direction. I think it's fair to say that, you know, for example, I mean, I think we're keen to provide employment opportunities wherever they may be found for people who have, whether it be neurodivergent or whatever. But I have to say that for us, our biggest focus has been trying to make sure we're providing job opportunities in the communities in which we operate. Because we do operate, as Vince was saying earlier, largely in rural communities for the power plants themselves. And you can make a really big difference economically to those communities if you are doing, if you're providing the sort of jobs that may not have existed before. And it's not just providing the jobs, it's also you're putting in infrastructure that has never existed before. The large solar plant we have in Zambales that Vince actually referred to, we built roads, bridges, etc., just to ensure, I mean, obviously, originally the goal was to enable the power plant to be built. But actually, the greatest use of those assets going forward is for the community. So providing assets, but also job opportunities in the local communities has been very, very important. And just again, to reiterate what Vince was saying, is that honestly, one of the single most important things we do is community engagement in the local communities, so that we have people wanting our power plants to be in their communities, not pushing them away. And I say, I think here in the Philippines, we're lucky that generally we're sort of pushing on an open door there, whereas in other countries, whether it be the UK or Australia or France, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of pushback on, you know, new transmission towers and wind turbines and all the rest of it.
Thank you, Jonathan. I mean, it's a challenge for not just for your company, but for the Philippines as a whole and globally to really have that focus that UK has on neurodivergent. But it's good to hear. I mean, it's always a good starting point to have that inclusion mindset. Vince?
Yes. For us, diversity is a what? Metrics. We have 48 women, 54 men, 3 female board members out of 9. But the inclusion is a how. Because how do you integrate, you know, multiple age? I'm the eldest in my firm, and we're trying to bring in younger associates. Even sexual orientation, we're trying to make it pretty normal. We have one person who's you use the word neurodivergent. He doesn't know he is, but we know he is. We're not going to mention names here. And occasionally there be a need for that person to just take time off. And we're very liberal in getting a reset, recharge. So interesting, the team organically brought it up to the board, to the Execom, that they need a internal, support, and they called it, they even a name for it, renewal, where they bring in counselors and therapists to the office to talk regularly. We've had 3 sessions. I'm glad that they initiated it. It wouldn't have come firsthand to me. And it's very much welcomed by the associates, by the team members. So we have a series of this in-house. It's very limited to within the firm. And maybe even post-COVID, there was a lot of mental health issues. So it's picking up a lot of traction. We call it renewal, where we get folks to speak about how to deal with or how to spot colleagues that may be too quiet. Little techniques like that. So interesting, but that was homegrown. Was brought up to us, and we said, yeah, why don't you run with it? So,
I hope you can sustain that and really be replicated by others.
And everyone has to attend, down up to the chairman has to attend this thing. So it's good. Let's see.
Because it entails education. And I mean, neurodivergence, from what I have read, they have the unique talents that can be really helpful for digitalization and the next industrial revolution as it touches technology. So with that, Jonathan, may I ask, how are you? Can you probably cite certain ways that your company? I'm sure you have a lot of digitalization going on that not everybody's aware, that really helps in terms of cost effectiveness and really promoting a sustainable source of energy for the country.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we've been trying to do is to use, whether you want to call it digitalization or, I mean, in the industry jargon is use of robotics, to improve the way we are processing and delivering everything that's going on after you've generated the power, so to speak. Because we have many power plants. We have many subsidiaries across not just the Philippines, but globally. What we're finding is that we're trying to deploy these software robots, so to speak, to significantly improve our capabilities there. And it's not just about speed, although believe me, these things can they can do in 15 minutes what it can take human beings many hours to achieve. But it's also that you tend to get better accuracy on the results. When you're compiling financial reports on multiple subsidiaries, processing of tax returns, all these kind of things. So we're finding that right now that those digitalization efforts are where things are really paying off. I'd say that on the front end, if you like, the ability to use algorithms, etc., in trading of energy, which for us is something we do already in the Philippines. We'll probably start doing to a greater extent in Australia before too long. So you need your systems up to scratch in order to make that effective.
For us, I'm sure Jonathan will agree, we have multiple project financing. The loan covenants are tedious, the omnibus loan security agreements here. And so how does one keep track of all your covenants, both positive, negative covenants, reportorial requirements? So we're looking at investing in software that would just help us monitor, hey, by 15 days after the quarter end, you have to submit to the bank, a report unaudited. But we forget that sometimes, or right before an interest payment date, certain covenants have to be submitted for compliance. So softwares now can crawl through those really intensive ALSAs that we have that our law firms here, I see some of their logos have done well, And it helps us manage, it's really contract management. And to keep track of that, you need really smart AI-supported software to help management keep track of, hey, we have to report our debt equity ratio by this date. And with multiple projects that we have, with multiple project financing, it's very important to keep track of those.
Yes.
Now, data centers is growing in this country. There's about 33. I now speak as a member of the board of ST Telemedia, one of our sponsors here, which has a joint venture with Globe on data centers. I'm on the board of ST Telemedia. There's 33 data centers in the Philippines, but a lot under construction. About 90 megawatts will be needed very soon. And this is close to your heart. Data centers do consume a lot of not just energy, but water. There's that famous quote that for every conversation you have with ChatGPT, it consumes 500 milliliters of water, or a plastic water bottle here. So water is an important resource to support data centers, and it's growing as the chips become smarter and heavy power consumers. Yeah.
Very, very interesting, Vince, because that was my former life in IFC, putting a system together on operational risks and legal risks. So it's good to hear about that. So I'd like to open the floor for questions. I think we still have time. Am I right? Yeah. So anyone on the floor? Yes, please. Can we have the mic? Okay, I can hardly. Yes, Jang, and that's you, Jang. And then
Yes.
maybe you can people who want to raise some questions we can just pass on the mic, please. Jang, over to you.
Yes, good morning, Jang Pascual. I'm a past president of FINEX. My question is directed to Deputy Ambassador Alistair. It's more about and congratulations on the retirement of your last coal-fired plant. Now, in a past life, I used to work in Shell, and it brought me to the southern North Sea. And I'm aware of the gas infrastructure that's in place that supplies both the mainland Europe and the UK. So my question is, given that the shift to renewables will not be overnight, and we heard that from Secretary Vince about the intermittency of renewables. So what is your current energy mix? What is the aspired energy mix, and what are the transition challenges to get you there?
Thank you very much for the question. I actually have somebody here who knows the answer.
Yes, because I'm in the energy business, whereas the Deputy Ambassador is not.
A pen pusher.
But actually, if you look at power generation in the UK, basically, it depends on whether or not it's a windy day. If it's a very windy day, as much as 65% of electricity is generated by wind farms. There's always about 15% in the UK that's coming from nuclear, and that's going to go up as large new nuclear plants come online. We haven't talked about nuclear yet on this stage, but to be honest with you, well, Vince says let's not talk about it, but reality is that for many countries, the UK included, nuclear is an absolutely critical part of getting to net zero. But on a windy day in the UK, 65% of electricity will come from, as much as 65% will come from wind. Could be as much as 10, 15% from solar, believe it or not. The UK is not thought of as a particularly sunny country, but actually there's enough solar in place now that it does make a difference. And then on a non-windy day, and especially if it's cloudy as well, 60% is coming from gas. So that's the sort of huge swing you get in a northern European country like the UK. But the UK is unusual in having quite as much wind on tap, potentially. I mean, I don't think there's any other country, possibly Denmark, but Denmark and the UK, but otherwise very few countries have the ability to have as much wind power.
You want to share your
I
thoughts
think
as well?
LNG or gas, sorry, will have to be an important aspect of renewable. If you go to, I'm sure you've had some visits to Australia. The Australian Natural Gas Association has ads that says we need more wind, we need more solar, and the only way to integrate them is you need gas to provide stable load, which makes sense. It's interesting. I think right now the transition is we need more gas to support renewables. It's a transition fuel, and as we're decommissioning or moving away from coal, that is the fuel that is needed. And as you said, it's happening in Australia, in the UK, and other countries. Yeah.
Thank you, Vince. Any questions?
Senen.
So we have time for one more question after this.
This addressed to Vince. Beyond investment banking, I've sort of discovered another life, and I've been quite involved in Rotary, which includes, of course, a lot of social advocacies. And one of the projects that we have in Rotary Club of Makati is, in fact, providing support to a home for abandoned elderly. And one of their main issues is they don't have power. So we have had to provide a generator to allow them to power their facility. And frankly speaking, the ironic part of it is that it's right in the midst of, your windmills in Tanay and Pililla. And so I can't understand it. I'm not a technical person, so there must, if you're talking about transmission, but I would have thought that it's literally under. And so I can't understand why that's not feasible.
Okay.
Thank you.
So when we talk about transmission with Jonathan, we're talking about those huge 230 kV to 500 kV. These are like 4-lane highway of electricity or 6-lane highway. And unfortunately, there's still a huge percentage, less than 10% of the population that does not have access to homes, access to electricity. And that's really a holy grail of most countries in ASEAN. So it may be that that elderly home is isolated from the distribution grid of Meralco. Sorry to mention that, but because Tanay is in Meralco. But if it's not far from our wind farm, we could work with Rotary Club and see how we could help with some solar. That's your agenda, Senen. And by the way, this happens a lot. Every time we go to we go through a project, the question is this going to benefit our electricity in our community? And sadly, it's not always the case because we're selling to the national grid, whether it's in Quezon province or Rizal or Zambales. That is a common question. And so we need to help the local distributor, whether it's a cooperative or a utility like Meralco, either bring in the last kilometer, the last mile to that community, but maybe we could help in a way as being, back to our quadruple bottom line, helping the host community. But Sinel, we'll talk about that offline and work with Rotary. Thank you.
One more question, and then we will have the last, yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi, I understand the transmission grids are granted via government franchise. Are they getting in the way?
Look,
He's trying to be diplomatic. It's okay, it's just us.
Yeah. In all seriousness, we have a very constructive relationship with NGCP. We really do. The problem is that they have a lot to do. And just as Vince was saying, we have built a lot of our own transmission lines. I'm pretty sure that we, at least, I think we're the second biggest spender on transmission lines in the Philippines, we ASEAN. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, many, many billions of pesos, tens of billions of pesos, to be honest with you, actually. And that's in order to enable our projects. But obviously, we need to work cooperatively with NGCP so that we work with them so that our transmission line meets their grid in a way that works for them and works for us and all the rest of it. I think the biggest issue is that we need a bigger strategic push on new transmission lines, particularly going to the north of Luzon, where there is a huge amount of generation potential in renewables. And arguably there needs to be some new thinking on how to finance and really catalyze those type of projects. So I would never say that NGCP are getting in the way. It's just that they're somewhat overwhelmed, as Vince just said, and we need to think about potential new structures that can accelerate the build-out that's needed if not just the government's goals are to be met, but all of the community's goals are to be met.
Mignon, I was responsible for privatizing Transco, wearing a previous hat. Yes, they're overwhelmed, and by law, they are literally required to provide transmission access to power plants by law. In practice, they're overwhelmed by everyone trying to interconnect to them. Like ASEAN, we have to work actively with the NGCP. Actively, almost we meet with them 4 times a month, just to see what can be done. And right now, we've learned that if they have no immediate plans for transmission, we may not even do that project. If we feel that that area is overly congested, or it will take a while before NGCP will roll out a transmission upgrade. Let me just clarify, we're 7,000 islands, so to interconnect the Philippines by itself through submarine cable is already a challenge. We have several thousand kilometers of submarine cable, and the governor of Marinduque wants to be interconnected, the governor of Catanduanes wants to be interconnected, the 2 governors of Mindoro wants to be interconnected. And the major accomplishment last year was that finally Mindanao was interconnected. Finally, a power plant in Mindanao could sell theoretically to some utility in Pangasinan, theoretically, which is an amazing accomplishment over the years, except it took so long. But nonetheless, active engagement with NGCP is important. I have to be careful what I'm about to say here. The franchise of NGCP doesn't expire till 2038, or 25 years from around 2005, so I'm maybe a bit short here. But there could be hybrid structures where maybe private sector or other quasi-government entities can help jumpstart additional transmission assets to help roll out more transmission assets. That's a lot of coded words there. I don't want to get into the details, but there are a lot of talks and ideas, brainstorming, how we could accelerate transmission. I think you have to say, though, at least relatively, compared to other countries, our grid is more modern than others. I could at least tell you that, given a lot of recent upgrades. But still, it's a challenge for a country that is 7,000 islands. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. So before I close with my statement, I'd like to get some words of wisdom, but in one statement on how we can achieve 2030. If we do this, then, or but, towards the vision of 2030. Maybe Deputy Ambassador first.
If we continue to commit to this mission and continue to invest in new technology and continue globally to be committed to achieving these targets, we should be able to mobilize the finance and the political will to achieve what at the moment looks to be an incredibly ambitious target. But ambitions are there to be met. And yes, if we can continue globally to coalesce around taking on the biggest fight of our existence of climate change. We can do it.
Thank you. Jonathan?
I said it earlier, but I'm just going to say it again. We need energy storage to come down in price and to be deployed at, frankly speaking, gigantic scale in order to really move renewables up the chain from being entirely intermittent to being a more dependable source of electricity for consumers.
Thank you, Jonathan. Vince?
We are blessed that we have an administration that's very committed to renewables, at least we know until 2028, until the next presidential elections. So we are in a golden moment as far as policy initiatives, as we have seen from the Department of Energy in recent circulars and initiatives. If financial institutions like you represent continue to support our projects, and I'm encouraged that there is increasing interest in green financing because the amount needed to deploy what is required as part of the energy transition is gargantuan. As more and more of you become more comfortable lending to renewable projects, obviously with decreasing credit risk spreads, right, Jonathan? For those who are very experienced, players like us, not just in the banking side, but also in insurance. Those are the things that, it's not really quite an if, but I'm just saying that there's also opportunities in this sector to get more involved for your institutions.
Thank you very much, Vince. So, wrapping it up, digitalization and diversity is a means to an end. The end goal is sustainability. As influencers, leaders, financial executives, with the trillions of US dollars gap to reach 2030 SDG goals, we ought to adopt an SDG purpose-driven capital mindset. As Mahatma Gandhi says, earth, the land, the air, and water are not inheritance from our forefathers, but rather a loan from our children and future generation. So at the very least, we should work together to hand it over the way it was handed over to us. Thank you very much, Jonathan and Vince and Deputy Ambassador. It has been a very productive discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Ambassador White, Jonathan and Vince, and of course, Gay, for a very interesting discussion. So before we move on to the awarding of our token of appreciation, I'd like to correct my introduction of Jonathan here. He is the Group CFO and Group Strategy Officer of ASEN. So anyway, now we'd like to present our token of appreciation to our speakers. And may I call on stage our President, Toti, Liaison Director of FINEX Week Committee, Mignon Ramos, and co-chairs of the FINEX Week Committee, Kai Reyes and Riza Latorre. again, thank you to our speakers, panelists, and moderator. To officially close today's program and deliver her closing remarks, may I call on the co-chair of FINEX Week Committee, Ms. Maricar Castillo Reyes.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and honored guests, again, good morning. Again, I'm Kai Reyes, President and CEO of Asticom. On behalf of the FINEX Week Committee, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the first day of what promises to be an exceptional week of learning, exchange, and collaboration. First, I'd like to extend our gratitude to Mr. Augusto Bengson, President of FINEX, for his visionary leadership for making this conference a reality. I would like to acknowledge our keynote speaker, Mr. Alistair White, Deputy Head of Mission, British Embassy, Manila, for sharing his global insights. A special thanks as well to Mr. Vince Perez of Alternergy Holdings Corp. And Mr. Jonathan Back of ASIN Corporation. Your expertise in energy transition has sparked important conversations around sustainability, conversations that will undoubtedly influence the future of our industries and society at large. To all our distinguished guests, speakers, and participants, thank you for making the opening day of FINEX Week a resounding success. Our theme today, Global Perspectives, Sustainability, Diversity, and Digitalization into the Modern Era, has been both timely and enriching. We have examined how these three pillars, sustainability, diversity, and digitalization, are no longer just buzzwords, but are essential drivers of global innovation, resilience, and progress. We've been privileged to hear from our thought leaders who have provided actionable insights on embedding these principles into our organizations. By doing so, we make our businesses more inclusive, adaptable, and ready to face the evolving challenges of the modern world. The diverse stories, strategies, and viewpoints shared today will undoubtedly fuel meaningful actions in the days to come. As we wrap up day one, I am excited to share that this is just the beginning. We have an incredible lineup of hybrid sessions over the next few days, which will dive deeper into these critical themes, and I encourage you all to join these sessions and be active participants in these important discussions. For day two, we will have climate risks, which will be tomorrow, and opportunities, building climate change resilience. Day three, we will have the navigating the generational gap towards transformational growth. Day four will be practical applications of AI to achieve Philippine development goals. And day five, we will have empower progress, inspire change, transformational growth through sustainability, diversity, and digitalization, which will be on-site at the Shangri-La Fort in BGC with a keynote speaker, Jaime Augusto Sobel de Ayala, and will be closed by our keynote speaker, Lorelai Oshal. Once again, thank you for your time and participation today. Let us continue to work together, driving change and fostering innovation as we navigate the complexities of this modern era. On behalf of the entire FINEX Week Committee, my co-chair, Riza Latorre, Liaison Director, Migs Ramos, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hardworking team members of FINEX Week. This has been months of work for the entire group. Nikki Tang, Ray Abilo, Aldi Garcia, Mai Bisnar, Jing Arellano, Jessie Carpio, April Lintan, Blanca Mercado, Paulo Azurin, J.M. Babiton, Joel Davao, Janice Maghinay, Tin San Juan, Manolo Garcia, Jo Marie Solano, together with a reliable secretariat led by Mike Benluan and Aljon Kapunay. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day, and looking forward to seeing you all in the succeeding days of our FINEX Week. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Kai, and thank you everyone who is present today to join us for the opening day of the 56th FINEX Conference. Just like what Kai mentioned, we have a lot in store for you this week, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow virtually for our second day of the FINEX Week. So tomorrow's topic will be climate risk and opportunities, building climate change resilience. Program will start at 12 noon and this will be via Zoom. Thank you all and have a great day, everyone.
Ayala Land investment is easier than ever. Through Ready Residences, you can move in early and enjoy your new property even during the down payment stage. Take advantage of extended payment terms and more affordable monthly installments available for durations of more than 24 months. Live in one of Ayala Land's sought-after developments across the Philippines. If you're ready to be part of a vibrant Ayala Land community, the time is now. Ready Residences by Ayala Land.
Ano ang gusto mong marating? Tara, sabayan ka namin. Punta tayo sa mga di laging naaabot. Doon, bibigyang buhay natin ang pangarap at sasalubungin ang pag-unlad. Sundan natin ang mga maghahatid ng pagbabago. Dala-dala ang mga pirasong bubuo nito. Dumiretso tayo patungo sa mas maaliwalas na bukas. Kung saan malayang bumabiyahe ang kahit sino. Tuloy-tuloy lang ang paglalakbay. Hanggang lahat tayo ay makaangat. Hanggang abot tanaw na ang kinabukasan. At abot kamay na natin ang araw. Marami na tayong narating sa loob ng 110 taon. At hindi tayo hihinto roon. Marami pa tayong tatahakin, tutuklasin, at tutuparin. Sa daan pabukas, andito kami. Kasabay mo sa pagsulong.
The DNA of business today is changing. It's no longer enough to be the biggest on the block. You've got to be nimble, adaptable, light on your feet. Because in today's world, it's all about how fast you can move. The need for speed is at the heart of any digital transformation. How fast you can go from idea to impact, overhead to optimized, development to delivery. At PlanView, we're building the future of connected work by helping business leaders like you translate strategy into results. All of this with a clear pane of glass view, giving the ability to assess risk, leverage real-time scenario planning, and even get quick insights into what actions to take on a large and small scale. So, what's in your future? How will the DNA of your business evolve? With PlanView, you can accelerate your growth, transform your business, and stay ahead of the competition. See the PlanView platform in action. Watch an on-demand demo now.